Ping Sun and her husband David came to Houston 2 years ago when he was named president of Rice University. Together, they've weathered Hurricane Rita and become involved in all aspects of the community as Ping bridges cultures personally and professionally. People at the university call Ping Sun their secret weapon. She calls herself fortunate. Well, let's talk about Rice University and how a girl from China got to this country. Where did it all begin?
Shanghai is my hometown, but I grew up in Tianjin, and then I went to Beijing for school. But when I was in school, I wanted to come to America to study. So I sent letters out to about 10 universities. Eventually, I applied to Princeton and Yale. I was very fortunate. I got into Princeton. They gave me a full scholarship. So you came to Princeton.
Well, let's go back in time a little further. When you were a child in China, there were not that many opportunities to go to school at all. How did you get chosen to go? How were you so lucky?
That was during the Cultural Revolution. I remember one day I went home after playing with my friends. I saw my grandmother sitting in the middle of the room. Red guards were running around the house. One red guard grabbed me and took me over to my grandmother. He told me my grandmother was the enemy of the people. I was so confused. I thought my grandmother always taught me to be a good person, to help other people. How can such a person be the enemy of the people? Her only crime was to marry my grandfather, because my grandfather was an aerospace engineer. He was working in a company in Hong Kong in 1949. He and a group of other engineers went back to China, took machinery, and a couple of pilots flew planes back to China. So this group of people was fairly well known in the country. They also received high salary. So we had a very good life. Of course, during the Cultural Revolution, he was accused being a spy. So he was kept in a small room. He was asked to write confession, but there was nothing to confess. But after a couple of years, the premier of China at the time, Zhou Enlai, made a statement. He said, this group of people helped China. We should not treat them this way. After that, things became much better. One day, I walked into school. The principal came to see me and said, Ping, you are being considered to be a candidate for a boarding school, for foreign language school.
How old were you?
At that time, I was about 11 years old.
So they just moved you right into this boarding school and you were 11 years old. And what was that experience like?
That was actually a very positive experience because I and my classmates became so close. We practically grew up together.
And you told me that this was a very opportune time in history because shortly after that they stopped sending kids to boarding school and stopped encouraging foreign languages, and China became more insular.
I was very fortunate again because right after my class was admitted, for some reason they decided not to take any students from the class behind me. So I was very fortunate just to get in.
You were in the perfect window,
yes,
as it were. What was it like for you coming from the rigid society of China to a college campus in America at age 16, 17, 18?
It was overwhelming at first, but I also felt I was a fish. Finally, I found the water. I also remember my first economics class, the professor was talking about supply and demand of Budweiser. I knew it was some kind of product, but I had no idea what Budweiser was. And after the class, I had the nerve to walk up to my professor and ask him what Budweiser was.
And what did he say? He must have been stunned.
He was. He was just, at first he was shocked by my question, and then he realized I was a foreign student.
So when you graduated from Princeton, you had an interesting career trajectory. What did you decide to do?
I went to law school. I went to Columbia Law School. After law school, I started practicing law in New York City.
And then somewhere in there, you met your husband.
I did. Actually, I met David my senior year in college. I was applying to law schools. I knew I wanted to stay in New York.
Did you have any idea at the time that you first met him that you would wind up with him?
No, I had no idea at the time. The admission director told me to go and meet Professor Libra. David was a professor at NYU Law School at the time. He was the director of Center of International Studies. He was also serving as informal advisor to Chinese students. I quoted him in my thesis. My thesis was on the U.S.-China cooperation in China's offshore oil exploration. Now we're in the capital of oil and gas.
Very synchronistic.
Right? Must be fate.
Mm-hmm. You and David were at Columbia for a long time, close to 23 years before you got the offer to come and be here at Rice. Was that a difficult decision to come to Texas?
Well, for me, coming to Texas was an adventure since I came from China. So I thought I had spent 19 years in New York. It was time to explore another part of America.
When you and David first came to Houston and saw Rice, what were your first thoughts? Did you think immediately, yes, this is a place where David and I can make a difference?
When we first came, I just had this wonderful, positive feeling about Rice, about Houston. Everyone was so nice, so I thought, yes, this could be home.
Well, you've been here 2 years and you've seen a lot of change. You and David have instigated a lot of change, and they've called you the secret weapon. Are you aware of that, Ping Sun, the secret weapon?
Thank you. I think I feel my role is to help David and help Rice to achieve the mission. When we first got here, David started a process called Call to Conversation. He wanted every group of the community, every part of the community, Rice community, Houston community, to be part of this process to discuss the future for Rice. After 1 year of discussions and meetings, presentations, breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, and dinner meetings, we came to a consensus. Now we have this 10-point plan for Rice.
But let's go back, because a lot of women say, well, that's your job and this is my job. You and David have very much of a partnership. Do you feel that that's part of your culture, or is it just something that's your relationship?
I think David and I have a very special relationship. He is just a wonderful, wonderful man. He is brilliant, but he's also so modest at the same time. I remember when I first met him, he never told me he was the president of Harvard Law Review. If you want to impress a girl, probably
a
first
law student anyway.
Right, you would, somehow slip that in the conversation, but he never told me that. So I had lots of respect for him.
Now you and David are married and you have 2 children, and you're a mixed marriage. He's Jewish and you're not. What has bridging that culture been like?
Negotiation. For instance, now we're in the discussion of when to send the children to Hebrew school, when to send them to Chinese school. So we just have to juggle a little bit. But I think communication is also the key.
Who's going to eat the pie?
Nobody.
家家过年真热闹，贴对联，
I know that keeping up their Chinese roots has been important to you. How do you do that?
We send them to Chinese school on weekends.
So they go to school all week long?
They go to school every day.
Every day. I wonder how they feel about that.
Not too happy, but I keep telling Daniel and Marissa that it's very important for them to learn how to read and write Chinese. And Daniel will also start Hebrew school soon. That's part of his heritage as well.
So they're going to have a very, very full plate.
Yes.
Now, Ping, you've been a lawyer for a long time, but when you moved to Houston, you really had to put your career on the back burner a little bit. Was that difficult for you?
Yes, at first, but again, I'm very fortunate. Now I am of counsel at Yetta Warden LLP. It's a small boutique firm specialized in commercial litigation and arbitration.
And then also you're involved, aren't you, with Teach for America?
Yes, yes, I'm on the board for Teach for America.
Tell me a little about that. That's a great organization.
I love Teach for America. This organization was started by Wendy Cobb. That was her dream. One day, all children in America will have the same educational opportunity. So her idea is to get the brightest college graduates to commit for 2 years of their time after graduation to teach at an inner city school.
Ping, when you think of balancing your life, what comes up for you? What do you do? How do you balance your life?
It's very difficult. I feel like I always have so many balls in the air. But my rule of thumb is the children are very important. So I try to go and pick them up whenever I can. Most of the mornings, I'm the one dropping them off. That's also the time to spend with them. I also love spending time with them in the afternoon when they come home. I, of course, also have lots of people helping me. I have my parents, and David also pitches in whenever he can. We also have wonderful staff here at the university and at the house. So I'm very, very fortunate.
Now, when you go back to China, you go back now with a husband and 2 children. Do you still feel strong roots to China?
I do. I grew up in China, and I've now spent, I have to say, more than half of my life in my new country, America. So I feel I'm in a unique position to be a bridge between the 2 cultures.
Do you ever wonder about the choices women have made throughout history? I have some stories for you. Emma Willard is another unfamiliar name in our series of women who've made a difference. But anyone who's enjoyed the benefits of higher education has her to thank. In 1821, Emma opened the Troy Female Seminary, the first school that offered girls the same quality education that was available to teenage boys. We too are primary existences, she stressed, not the satellites of men. Imagine the hundreds of thousands of women who've attended college and earned degrees because of Emma Willard and pioneers like her. Are you making the most of everything you've learned? Think about it. We have all kinds of interesting information to share with you on our website, balancingyourlifeonline.com. I'm Ellen Susman. Thanks so much for joining us. Until next time.
Balancing Your Life is made possible in part by the Lee and Joseph D. Jamail Foundation, J.P. Morgan Chase, Sarah S. Morgan, Fred Barron, and Lisa Blue. Additional funding is provided by the Laurie M. Tisch Foundation, Andrea and Jim Gordon, Goldman Sachs, Amagi Bank, I.W. Marks Jewelers, Terrell W. and Joan B. Oxford, and others. For a complete list, visit us at www.balancingyourlifeonline.com.